Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel here, and keep producing Calgary sports and sports content in general on this channel here. Let's take a look at some more Calgary Flames trade retrospects. And in this particular case here, I'm going to be talking about the Jarome Iginla trade, this time when we traded him away here. However, under very unique circumstances here, this is part 1 of 2 in my Jarome Iginla trade retrospect here. As in this part 1 here, we're going to talk about the trade that actually happened when we traded him to the Pittsburgh Penguins just before the trade deadline in the 2012-2013 season there, as the Calgary Flames definitely decided it was time to start rebuilding, as it was time to sell off expiring contracts and assets here. And one of the trades that we made was Jarome Iginla. Definitely was a tough decision, and looking back, it was necessary to do in terms of moving on and ushering a new era, and wouldn't necessarily say clear any cap space because Jarome Iginla's contract was expiring, but we needed to try to recoup in some assets and draft picks here. However, let's just say that didn't necessarily pan out in this trade here, and it was Jay Feaster that made this trade. And you might say these were one of the trades and moves that he made towards the end of his tenure that warranted why he was showing the door, especially after when the Calgary Flames changed their management structure to bring in Brian Burke to be president of hockey operations, and he obviously concluded that we needed to make a trade or change there because I didn't think we got full value out of Jarome Iginla. And then I also made another trade retrospect that's coming where I made one on Jay Bouwmeester there. So before I get into the trade that actually happened here, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I mostly do Calgary sports. I also do personal logs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences, let's say I'm on the road or at a sporting event. So that's all the stuff that I post on my channel here. So if that sounds like you'd be interested in to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, you know what you need to do. Just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and I also have my other social media links down in the description below there. So for this being part 1 here, we'll be talking about the trade that actually happened where Jarome Iginla decided to join the Pittsburgh Penguins. To join the March of the Penguins as they were looking to load up, as they were still looked upon as a Stanley Cup contender here. Part 2, I'm going to look at the trade that was reported to happen where he was going to the Boston Bruins, but ultimately, since Jarome Iginla had a no trade clause in his contract here, he ultimately had a say where he wanted to go. He ultimately decided to go to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. And in the part 2, I found a couple articles in that I'll talk about in that video on how they looked upon that alternate universe if Jarome Iginla decided he wanted to go to the Boston Bruins, and what could have played out differently. So, and then it's the other question I'll ask you if you watch both parts. Which trade we would have been better off having, or would have had a little more value out of looking back at either this trade that I'm about to talk about, or the reported trade that was on the table, and that was reported all night there. Because what would happen there is that trade was reported all night there, and Jarome Iginla was taken out of the game, for protecting the asset there. And then ultimately after the game, Jay Feaster announced that he was going to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. So he was still going to wear gold and black either way. It's just a matter he was either going to have a penguin on his front or a circled B on the front there. So let's take a look at the trade retrospect here, as in both cases, the Calgary Flames traded Jarome Iginla in this trade and the trade that was reported, that we would have had 3 assets in return here. So ultimately, the Calgary Flames traded away Jarome Iginla as he agreed to waive his no movement clause to go to the Pittsburgh Penguins late March on 2013 there. As he was going to the Pittsburgh Penguins, in exchange, the Calgary Flames got Ben Nahowski, new forward. Also forward Kenny Agostino. And the Calgary Flames got a first-round pick in 2013 draft there, which ultimately it wound up being 23rd overall, as the Pittsburgh Penguins went all the way to the conference championships in the playoffs that year. Fittingly, they actually played the Boston Bruins in the conference championship there, and Pittsburgh got ousted by the Boston Bruins in the Eastern Conference Championship there. So the Calgary Flames used that pick that they got in the Jarome Iginla trade for Morgan Klimchuk here, and you could understand to say, who are these guys? Well, that's kind of the point of this trade retrospect here, is that none of these players really panned out for the Calgary Flames here. I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins did pick up Jarome Iginla for a playoff run, and they did make it all the way to the conference championship. They got there pretty easily there, but then they got swept by the Boston Bruins here. But Jarome Iginla, when he was approached by the Calgary Flames management to look at considering waiving his no movement clause so Calgary can try to get some assets to build for the future here, well, as you see in this trade here, we didn't really build to the future here, because we'll take a look at where these players wound up here and what eventually we got out of these players in other trades or moves that we made later here. But Jarome Iginla only played with the Pittsburgh Penguins for the rest of the 2012-13 season and the playoffs there. As I mentioned, he was a pending unrestricted free agent there, and Pittsburgh did load it up, and they obviously still had money tied up in they had Sidney Crosby, Vinny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury, and Chris Letang there, those big names. And Jarome Iginla wanted a chance to play with Sidney Crosby, and he definitely had immediate chemistry with Sidney Crosby when they played together in the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver there. And Sidney Crosby was famous for shouting Iggy to feed him the puck that he roofed it over Ryan Miller to win the gold medal on the golden goal there. So that was definitely the appeal why Jarome Iginla decided to want to go to the Pittsburgh Penguins over the Boston Bruins here. But it definitely handcuffed the Flames here, because he had the no movement clause, and he only wanted to go to contenders at the time. Because I remember he said he wanted to go to the Boston Bruins, Pittsburgh Penguins, and this is also the time when the Los Angeles Kings were still at their strong. He also wanted to go there. Or he also wanted to go to Chicago Blackhawks. Basically, he looked at teams that most recently won a Stanley Cup and wanted to have a chance to win a Stanley Cup. To almost pull the infamous, what we say, the Ray Bourque, spent all time with one franchise here, and almost got there. One case, Jarome Iginla did in 2004, and debatably say should have got it. But Ray Bourque, he went to the finals twice in 1988 and 1990 with the Boston Bruins, but both times they lost to the Edmonton Oilers. And when the Boston Bruins were, they were struggling to rebuild, and ultimately they traded Ray Bourque, and he went to the Colorado Avalanche and eventually got his cup here. Well, unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for the case for Jarome Iginla here, but definitely part two is definitely going to be an interesting looking back at that video, and you can maybe say alternate universe time here, but it's obvious how much Jarome Iginla meant to the Calgary Flames, and he's our all-time leading scorer, and you could say he is our greatest Calgary Flame here, because he scored over 500 goals with the Calgary Flames. I think it was 525 goals to be exact here, and I believe it's 1,095 points. That's his franchise records there. But he definitely was still was at the top of his game, but slowly declining here, gave him the power forward here. But the Calgary Flames definitely needed to move on here, and up to the point, he had 11 straight 30-goal seasons, which definitely is incredible, seeing the list that he's done that with here. But the time of this trade here, keep in mind the 2012-13 NHL season was the lockout short season here. In 31 games with the Calgary Flames before he got traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins, he had 9 goals, 13 assists for 22 points there. But I think I mean, the whole team was struggling at that time there, and that was ultimately why we decided it was time to start rebuilding and try to get assets that didn't pan out here. But I know Jarome Iginla, as great and genuine of a person he is, I think he definitely bit his tongue many times with all the speculation and all the trades he kept and asked about, or about his future with Calgary, and it definitely, I think, was starting to get to him here. And I mean, we definitely missed him at the time, and he had that classy press conference when he left here. But then he ultimately went to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it did rejuvenate him a bit, because knowing that he had a chance to play with Sidney Crosby, and he did, and have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. Because when he went to the Pittsburgh Penguins for the rest of the season there, he played 13 games. He had 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points there, so he definitely almost had a point a game there. It definitely rejuvenated him. And then in the playoffs here, definitely Jarome Iginla definitely stepped up his game in the playoffs here. I still say the best that we saw Jarome Iginla in the playoffs was in the 2004 Stanley Cup playoff run there. And let's just say if things played differently there, and interestingly, since I brought up the 2004 Stanley Cup run, I made another trade retrospect where we helped the Tampa Bay Lightning in a way in building up their team to win the Stanley Cup there. Do you remember the time when we traded Sandy McCarthy and a couple picks for Jason Weimer? I talked about that in that trade there, and there was one piece in that trade that definitely helped that said Tampa Bay Lightning win the Stanley Cup here. But then in that playoff run in 2013 there, Pittsburgh went to the conference championship there, so he played in 15 games there. He scored 4 goals, 8 assists for 12 points there. So we definitely saw that Jarome Iginla that we saw his peak in Calgary here. It just looked really weird not seeing him wearing Flaming C on the front of his crest there. And after that season there, he did ultimately sign with the Boston Bruins after all there. And that's where the part 2 is going to be interesting in that video where, and there was a couple articles I found where they kind of did that speculative alternate universe thing on what could have happened if Jarome Iginla actually did decide to go to the Boston Bruins instead of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and how things could have potentially played differently there for both teams there. And you might almost say this could be a case where the team might have won a trade without actually making the trade in a way. And as you know, Jarome Iginla, after he played with the Calgary Flames, Pittsburgh Penguins, he played that one season with the Boston Bruins, and then he signed a fairly lucrative deal towards the end of his career with the Colorado Avalanche, and then he finished his career with the Los Angeles Kings before he missed a whole season due to injury, and then he ultimately decided it was time to retire. And finally, he announced it as a Calgary Flame to retire, and he already has his accolades about getting his number retired by the Calgary Flames, and the fact that we're waiting for the call to the Hockey Hall of Fame here. So that was the Jarome Iginla to the Pittsburgh Penguins part here, as they definitely got full rental value out of him here. But then the pieces that we got in return here, well, one of the pieces we got was Ben Hanowski. And right now, if you're wondering, where is he playing? Well, according to Wikipedia here, he's playing for the Kohler Halle in Germany, if I said that right there. As he definitely, he was with the Calgary Flames organization, mostly with the farm team there. He definitely didn't stick on, and he eventually did not get qualified. And eventually he went overseas to continue playing professional hockey here. But originally, Ben Hanowski, he was drafted 63rd overall in 2009 by the Pittsburgh Penguins, so he was always a Pittsburgh Penguin before he got traded to the Calgary Flames here, and he's the guy that played at the St. Cloud State there. So we definitely, I know one of the things that has changed, and especially during the Jay Feaster era here, and I think even a little more now with Brad Treliving, that we definitely seem to have picked up a few more American college players over time here. But Ben Hanowski here, he actually did initially looked good right away, and maybe gave us some hope, is that he did actually made his NHL debut late in that season, after when it was all but done for the Calgary Flames here. Ben Hanowski actually scored his first goal of the NHL in his first NHL game as a Calgary Flame here. So was there saying any hope here? However, it didn't necessarily pan out here, as he definitely struggled to keep up with the game here. He was definitely blown away that he was involved in that trade here, but like I said, he made his NHL debut on April 15th, 2013 in Calgary, and he scored. He's from Minnesota, so he actually scored his first goal against the Minnesota Wild. Ultimately, Calgary lost that game, but he definitely did not stand out with the Calgary Flames here, because after with the regime change, with Brad Treliving coming in eventually as general manager here, we eventually didn't qualify him, and he decided to continue playing hockey overseas here, because he was right in college, right until he made his Flame debut here, because his last season with St. Cloud State Huskies in the 12-13 season, he played 37 games, he scored 17 goals, 14 points for 31 points there. His best season was the season before there, in the 11-12 season. He played 39 games, he had 23 goals, 20 assists for 43 points here. I'm looking all this on Wikipedia here, but overall in the NHL here, he only played 16 games in the NHL all with the Calgary Flames here. He played 16 games, 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points here. He had that 1 goal in his first game with the Calgary Flames, so he played 5 games in the 12-13 season, towards the end of the season where it was all but done for the Calgary Flames. And then in the 13-14 season, he played 11 games for the other 6 remaining games of his NHL career there. That's where he got the 2 assists here. And then he was with the Flames organization, in 13-14, where he played also with the Abbotsford Heat there. And that was the farm team time there. He played 55 games there. He put up okay numbers, in 55 games, he had 13 goals, 18 assists for 31 points here. And then he played 4 playoff games and picked up an assist there. And then when the franchise moved to Adirondack, the Adirondack Flames in the 15-16 season, or the 14-15 season, because it's 15-16 season, that's when he moved over to Annesburger Panthers in the German League, the DEL. He played 2 seasons with Danneberger, and then Kohler Hales, where he is now. But the last season in North America as a Flame in the farm team with Adirondack here, he played 56 games. He had 16 goals, 9 assists for 25 points here. So he definitely lost some of his offensive touch here at the professional level here, and the Calgary Flames decided it was time to move on here, and he did not pick up interest anywhere else in the NHL here. So as I say, he's been in Germany for the last 4 years here. Last season with the Kohler Hale in Germany here, he played in 31 games. He scored 10 goals, 10 assists for 20 points here. So and then he also played in 11 playoff games there, where he had a goal and assist for 2 points there. So that was Ben Hanowski here. So other than scoring in his first ever NHL game, he definitely barely had a cup of coffee with the Calgary Flames here. So that was Ben Hanowski. So the other player that we got in return in the Jarome Iginla trade was Kenny Agostino, and there's another forward here. And actually, in terms of being in the NHL here, he actually had more time in the NHL here, and he's actually bounced around with a couple organizations here. So first, he was originally drafted 140th overall in the 2010 draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins here, but he never actually played with the Pittsburgh Penguins here. And actually, currently right now, he is with the Toronto Maple Leafs farm team, the Toronto Marlies, in the American Hockey League. So he's under contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs here. And this guy was the guy that played at Yale Bulldogs, and he was a member of the 2013 National Championship team. So we had another American college player. This time, Kenny Agostino was from New Jersey here. So when it comes to his playing career here, well, he did play with the Calgary Flames not until the following season in 13-14 here, as in the 13-14 season, after he was done his college with the Yale Bulldogs, because he still played a full season with the Yale Bulldogs in 13-14 there. He played in 33 games. He had 14 goals, 18 assists for 32 points there, so he almost had a point-a-game pace there. And actually the season before was his finest in the ECAC with the Yale Bulldogs, as he played in 37 games. He had 17 goals, 24 assists for 41 points there, so he was a point-a-game on the collegiate level here. But he did make his NHL debut with the Calgary Flames late in the 2013-14 season. That season we still struggled and definitely wasn't going to make the playoffs here. But he played in 8 games and he actually did score a goal and assist for 2 points there. So just like Ben Hanowski there, he had an early initial return here, but he did spend a lot more time with the farm team more than with the Calgary Flames. As also in the 13-14 season there, he was with the Adirondack Flames farm team there. He played in 67 games, so actually it was 14-15 here, there. He played 67 games there, and he did not play in the NHL that season. He played 67 games, he had 15 goals, 28 points for 43 points there, so I think he did a little better than Ben Hanowski at the professional level in the American Hockey League. And then in the 15-16 season, he did spend more time with the Stockton Heat when that franchise then went to Stockton. In 65 games, he played 65 games. He scored 23 goals, 34 assists for 57 points there. So he almost had a point a game there. But he only played 2 games in the Calgary Flames in the NHL that season. And then afterwards, the Calgary Flames definitely decided it was time to move on and didn't qualify him. So it was another guy that within a couple of years, he was no longer with the Calgary Flames organization here. He's also spent some time with the St. Louis Blues organization, and he also spent some time with the Boston Bruins organization, and he also was with the Montreal Canadiens, and now he's a New Jersey Devil there, and he actually had some familiarity with Ray Shero, because it was Jay Feaster who made the trade with Ray Shero, and Ray Shero, before he got let go, was the New Jersey Devils general manager there, so he had a rapport with him. So, and that was last season when he was in the New Jersey Devils. Now he's with the Toronto Maple Leafs organization here. Actually, overall in his NHL here, he actually did play. He's played 85 games in the NHL here, according to Wikipedia here, as of the 18-19 season here. He has 8 goals, 22 assists for 30 points, and that's overall in the NHL. He's played for the New Jersey Devils, the Montreal Canadiens, the Boston Bruins, St. Louis Blues, and the Calgary Flames here, as he only played 10 games with the Calgary Flames. He had played 7 games with the St. Louis Blues in 16-17 there. In 7 games, he had a goal, 2 assists for 3 points here. And then in 17-18, he had played 5 games with the Boston Bruins, got an assist there. And then he played 36 games with the Montreal Canadiens. Actually, 18-19, he spent most of that season with the NHL clubs, because he started the season with the Montreal Canadiens in 18-19. He played 36 games. He had 2 goals, 9 assists for 11 points there, and then he got traded to the New Jersey Devils. And then he played 27 games in that season and scored 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points here. So eventually, he did have a little more than a very brief cameo than Ben Hanowski here, but Kenny Agostino, for the purposes of this trade, wasn't with the Calgary Flames organization for more than a couple seasons here. Then the last piece of the trade was Morgan Klimchuk, who the Calgary Flames used that first-round pick on, and Morgan Klimchuk definitely looked like an intriguing prospect. He definitely had a great career in the Western Hockey League, mostly with the Regina Pats here, and then he eventually was traded to the Brandon Wheat Kings towards late of his WHL career here. But Morgan Klimchuk definitely, I remember for much of his career here, after getting drafted here, he definitely was battling injuries here, and Morgan Klimchuk definitely, he's only played 1 game with the Calgary Flames and in the NHL in total here, and that happened in the 17-18 season there, and he didn't get anything here. And ultimately, he did spend 4 seasons with the Calgary Flames affiliate team, because after he was drafted by the Calgary Flames in the 2013 draft here, he did play his last season with the Regina Pats, full season with the Regina Pats here, as he had looking at his numbers here, I mean, his best season with the Regina Pats was his draft year. In 12-13 there, he had 72 games, he had 36 goals, 40 assists for 76 points there. Then the year after he was drafted, he was still a Regina Pat here. He played 57 games, 30 goals, 44 assists for 74 points there. And then he played 4 games with the Abbotsford Heat after the end of the WHL season there. He got no points there. And then his last season in the Western Hockey League, where he was a Regina Pat, and then he got traded to the Brandon Wheat Kings there. He played 27 games with the Regina Pats. He had 14 goals, 16 assists for 30 points there. So he definitely maintained over a point a game there. And then when he got traded to the Brandon Wheat Kings, he played 33 games. He had 20 goals, 30 assists for 50 points there. And then he played in 13 playoff games that season, scoring 3 goals, 10 assists for 13 points there. And then 15-16 was his first full season at the professional level, as he played with the Stockton Heat. In 55 games, he had 3 goals, 6 assists, and 9 points there. That's where he was battling injuries, and he did seem to struggle a little bit transition to the professional level there. But then 16-17 and then 17-18 there, it looked like maybe his stock was going up just a little here, because in the 16-17 season he was all with the AHL here. In 66 games, he had 19 goals, 24 assists for 43 points there. And then 17-18, which that was the season that he made his NHL debut and played 1 game there. And actually, I remember going to a game where we took on the Florida Panthers, and that was the game I remember Dougie Hamilton scored a hat trick there. Morgan Klimchuk actually was called up with the Calgary Flames there, and he actually took part in the pregame twirls there, but he wasn't dressed and actually played in the game there. So I got to see at least Morgan Klimchuk wear a Calgary Flames jersey on the ice there. But getting back into the 17-18 season there, in 62 games, he had 19 goals, 21 assists for 40 points there. And then he played that 1 game there. And then the last season, he was with the Calgary Flames franchise there in the 18-19 there, as he played in 17 games, 3 goals, 5 assists for 8 points there. And then eventually the Calgary Flames traded him to the Toronto Maple Leafs franchise. That's where you see Andrew Nielsen. That's how he became part of the franchise there, and he hasn't played in the NHL yet for the Calgary Flames, and has been probably a career minor leaguer here. And then eventually Morgan Klimchuk that same season got traded to the Ottawa Senators. So now he is with the Ottawa Senators franchise as a Binghamton Senator here. So that was definitely, looking back on the Jarome Iginla trade retrospect, this was the trade that actually happened here. We definitely did not get full value for Jarome Iginla in that trade to the Pittsburgh Penguins here, because you could probably say a combination of the rest of the season and playoffs here. I think he played just as many games. He actually played more games with the Pittsburgh Penguins than the 3 assets that we got returned at the NHL level here. I mean, all 3 players did play in the farm team here, and ultimately at least got to play 1 game with the Calgary Flames here. But when we're talking about you could say the greatest Calgary Flame of all time here, well, we definitely did not get full value for him, and you could probably say that was one of the cases why Brian Burke made the decision to let Jay Feaster go, and you could probably say it wasn't really surprising there. So, I mean, this was part 1 of looking back on the Jarome Iginla trade that actually happened when he got traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. Part 2, we're going to take a look at the trade that was reported to happen, that didn't happen, and then we'll look at a couple articles where they look at, how the Boston Bruins might have actually benefited from the trade that didn't happen, and how that playoffs could have played out differently if, let's say, Jarome Iginla decided to go to the Boston Bruins. And my understanding is that Jarome Iginla actually lives in Boston full time since he's retired with his family here. So, yeah, that's part 1. And stay tuned for part 2 as we'll take a look at the reported trade and talk about that. And then I'll ask, which trade would you say would have been better for the Calgary Flames? This trade or that reported trade that didn't happen with the Boston Bruins there? And there was actually one asset in that reported trade that, in some roundabout way, we did get some value out of one asset. So stay tuned for that video. So as I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, but I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road on holidays or at a sporting event there, and maybe I even post anything else on my channel here, so that's all I post here. If that sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. Just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and I have my other social media links down in the description below to follow me there. So, as I'll say in this case, go Flames go, and I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you in part 2, where I'll talk about the trade that was reported to happen and was in place, but didn't actually happen, and let's speculate on how things could have played out differently if Jarome Iginla was still wearing black and gold, but had the spoked wheel logo instead of a penguin on the front of his chest there. That's going to be interesting, but which trade would you have rather had? This one or that one if you look at that video? So I'll see you then.